Now enjoy the show, but don't forget our safe word.
And welcome to my first Sunday morning show. I was going to change it or call it easy on a Sunday morning or something crazy like that. But right now, I'm going to just keep it kind of a fantasy fan because that's what, the more I thought about it, this is going to be a sit-start type show where we, kind of back like regular show from a fan's point of view. I'll be asking some questions to my guest. I'll have a couple different people popping in and out, but right now, starting the show with me, I do have Landers from the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network. Where over there he does the First and Goal podcast. I think Tuesday mornings at 10:30 now, and Saturdays at 2 p.m. Lou, thanks for joining me this morning. Are you out there?
Hello, Mr. Easy. How are you doing? Hello, Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports chat room. Hello to those listening and watching on YouTube. And yes, First and Goal show. We're actually headed to Tuesday and Friday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern. Lenny was gracious enough to give us those time slots with the baseball season kind of wrapping up. He'll still be doing.
Did you say Friday now? Did I miss Tuesday and Friday?
No, it's starting next
Tuesday
week.
And Saturday. Okay.
Tuesday and Saturday. We're headed to Tuesday and Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern, thanks to the legend himself. But Easy, glad to be on here, man. I know we had some fun doing podcast, kind of flying by the seat of our pants when we were doing one of the auctions.
Sure, I still do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a blast here, and love to see everybody here in the chat room as well on LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. If you are listening somewhere else, come to the chat room and hang out with us and with all the other fine folk in the chat room.
Right, that's it. You're at Landers Talk, or it's Landers Talks. Is there an S at the end? Make sure I have that right.
There is. It's Landers Talks, and it was pointed out to me. I didn't even think about it that it also kind of looks like Landers Stalks. So that's a little.
I like it.
So that's kind of a little weird because I don't stalk.
Are you sure? I've been accused, but hey, you know what? What can I say? That's Mrs. Easy. She didn't love me at first. I had to stalk. So,
Mrs. Easy found herself a wonderful man. So even if you had to stalk in the beginning,
there you go.
Yeah, Landers Talks. But if you write Lander Stalks, same thing.
All right, I like it. I'm just Easy Kill out there on Twitter. It's just @afantasyfan. Chris Allen's going to pop in and out, hopefully. Chris, like I said, does this for a living. Not a living. He has a real job, but he actually gets paid for some gigs, and I've always told him, don't pass up paid fantasy gigs for me at this point. So if he pops in, I'll let you know, and we'll go from there. These are going to be quick, short shows. Obviously, we just killed 3 or 4 minutes, but just wanted to make sure everybody out there knew where we were, who we were, why we're doing this. And again, we do have to thank Andrea and Lenny. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. Like I said, I come from an era where I'm a lot older than I think a lot of people in the chat room. Lenny's up there, but I come from a radio back in the day. I grew up in a house with one small television, so radio was it. And now to be able to, and anyone who has paid attention to this, I have over extremed. I have a whole studio little area now and all that. So to be able to just hop online and have, and I don't care, me and Chris have talked, I don't care if it's one person out there listening or multiple, but just to be able to get on and have people listen to something I have to say is pretty unique and fun for this generation. And people be able to grow up with this, I think is neat. And I would tell anybody, you know what, go get a mic, go get a headphone, play with some software, voice your opinions out there. And the world will be a better place if we're all doing that, I think. So, so that's where I'm going. Lou, let's just start. There's going to be some sit and start questions, hopefully out there in the chat room. I have a few of my own, obviously, because again, I'm the fan here. But why don't we go?
I'm also a fan too, Easy. I mean,
you're much more expert than me. You're much more expert than me.
I don't want to consider myself an expert. I like to consider
that's okay.
myself an advice giver. And
that's me too. I enjoy that part. You know, I've told everyone because my belief, and I think on Twitter, I don't even know how I word it. I haven't seen it so way, so much as, you know what, I love the math of fantasy. You know what, I want everyone to give me all the numbers, but I want to do the problem myself. I don't want anybody to tell me how to set my lineup. But you know what? I take all responsibility. I'm not one of the, I'm not going to yell and scream if somebody gave me advice and it doesn't, work or something like that. You do your own work, do a little homework, but listen to some people and take that advice and enjoy it.
Yeah, I've never been one to, when I do give advice, to be like, use my advice. I always say, take what I say and use it at your disposal, whether you want to use it or not. At the end of the day, you're the one who still should be setting your lineups. And yes, I did join Easy on video, so you can follow me now. I was a little skeptical of doing it because I'm going to be moving in the next few weeks, and the place is kind of a mess. But you're here to look at my beautiful mug and Easy's beautiful mug anyway.
Oh, yeah, I'm so pretty.
Who cares?
You know what? I have been amazed, though, how many people have said a few things to me like, well, Easy, I'm just not sure I want to be on video. Well, they don't realize, turn the camera off. It's not that bad. And, hey, trust me, there's not a lot of people listening or watching on YouTube. I am amazed how many do. Don't get me wrong, but it's a small hand, and people are there for the advice. So, they don't care what we look like, I don't feel, because, again, I have a face for radio, not YouTube. But let's do a little bit of fantasy stuff. Like I said, we don't want this to go too long because we know all of you are setting lineups and stuff. And again, this has been a rough day for me. First thing in the morning, or it's not even first thing in the morning. I do busy Sundays when it comes to football. So adding this show has definitely put some pressure on Easy with cooking and doing some stuff for the family. But let's do some quick news, notes, anything there that you want to bring up right off the bat.
Well, it is confirmed, first off, that Leonard Fournette is not playing today, which means that, of course, TJ Yeldon should be in lineups. But I don't know if you saw my post earlier on Facebook. I know you're more active on Twitter. Corey Grant, the other running back in Jacksonville, might be a nice contrarian play for those people who are especially in DFS, because everyone's going to be on Yeldon, but Grant is actually just as proficient as a pass catcher and had more volume, or as much volume, last week. So that's
I picked up Grant right away this morning, because at that point I still thought Yeldon wasn't even going to play either because he was hurt, but now they are saying he's good and is at least going to be the starter.
Yeah, and I mean, when you have a timeshare type situation like they have in Jacksonville right now, being the starter doesn't mean a whole lot, right? I mean, just because he's going to, maybe be on the first drive, come game time, I mean, sometimes it tends to be the hot hand. I mean, if Grant gets an early look, takes a pass for, 20, 30 yards or something, he might be the hot hand. It's kind of what you see in New England all the time with White and Burkhead and Michelle. The hot hand is going to be the guy they feed the ball to.
The fan of me, though, always pushes for that start. And I understand a lot of, and you say you don't want to be an expert, but a lot of people say that. But I still, obviously the guy getting the ball in that first drive has the first opportunity. So if something happens, obviously positively, you know what, he's got the advantage right from the get-go. So, I mean, I always look at that. But you know what, I have Fournette in the league, and I traded for him a couple weeks ago after he had some issues the first week. And I'm actually excited they're setting him again. I want a healthy Fournette when he comes back.
And, it's funny because a lot of people say that the Packers should be doing the same thing with Aaron Rodgers this week because he's playing through a sprained MCL. And, yeah, we saw what the Packers offense looked like in the first half of that game versus the Bears when Rodgers left. We saw what they looked like last year without him. But if they want any chance of going anywhere this year, he's going to need to be healthy. And if this is a game that you should be able to win versus a Redskins team, regardless of Rodgers being in there. So I'm a little skeptical of them using Rodgers. However, with Rodgers playing, obviously you're going to be starting him. The guy is a beast, but it's interesting to see, the Jags playing it safe with Fournette, Packers not playing it so safe with Aaron Rodgers.
Right. I agree. And I'm the same way. I own Rodgers in a few leagues also. I don't know. There's something about 18 points from Rodgers just feels like more, even though you get that 18 from about every other quarterback. You just can't sit him. I had that option last week to sit him and play Dalton. And the problem is Dalton played Thursday. He played. So I sat Dalton, and obviously that cost me And it was a league where I'd literally lost by a few points. So that decision might actually cost me some points because obviously Dalton had well. But hey, I'm a Bengals fan. I'm wearing the gear and all that, but I could not start Dalton on a Thursday night prime time against the Baltimore when I had Aaron Rodgers even coming in limpy. So you know what? I had to roll with that, and it cost.
Yeah, you know what? I think I said it yesterday on the podcast. I had Carlos Hyde on my bench this week. You know, guy had 2 touchdowns. Guys had 4 touchdowns in the first 3 weeks. He scored a touchdown in every single game this year. Even with Duke Johnson Jr. and Nick Chubb there, Hyde still getting those touchdowns. So, you know, we all make blunders with our lineups. It's going to happen. We actually have some questions here, Easy. It looks like we've forgotten about the chat room here. I can't believe we've forgotten about them.
Because we kind of went on tangent. Yes, Luck and Golf was one of the first questions I saw out there, and I think that's Andrea and Cubub are playing that. Then that was the decision they were looking at. I think I saw them decide to go with Golf. What's are your thumbs up or thumbs down?
I think I'm thumbs up on that. I look at the teams. I look at where they're playing. I look at who they're playing against. Jared Goff is maybe not as big of a name yet as Andrew Luck, but when you look at the Rams playing at home, the Chargers have a good defense, but not a great defense. They've been passed on quite a bit this year, and I love that Rams offense. With Andrew Luck, I do like him, but he is turnover prone. He's thrown picks in each of his first 2 games this year, and he has to go on the road to Philadelphia, which is never an easy place to play.
No, I agree. It's a tough choice, but and in Philadelphia, weather. Hopefully, Chris pops in at some point. I was going to ask him about the weather. I think that's the only game where weather's a big issue, but it's mainly just rain. I don't think wind or anything like that.
I think there is a little bit of rain going in there as well. That's what I heard. It's still not scaring me off of Corey Clement in DFS.
No, I would agree. Right.
Yeah, but it certainly is. It's not even really scaring me off of Nelson Aguilar, to be perfectly honest, either, or Zach Ertz if you have them, or T.Y. Hilton or Eric Ebron. I'm not
good. I have T.Y. Hilton on a few teams. I need that advice. I mean, obviously, you're never sitting T.Y. even in a rain game. And again, I have confidence that Luck's going to get him the ball a few times and maybe even something deep. It seems like in my watching the games when it's rain and not a lot of wind, some of those, those 20-yard passes turn into 70-yard touchdowns.
Yeah, well, what people forget is that the rain affects both sides. I mean, just because it's raining, a defender has a better chance of slipping, and if that defender slips versus T.Y. Hilton, he's going to be wide open.
Right.
I agree. As much as it could affect one team, it could also affect the other team. Another question here, Sony Michel or Jalen Richard. I mean, quite frankly, I don't like either of those players. That's from Cubub. Cubub, do you have any other options? I assume it would be a flex spot. I assume those aren't one of your RB2 options. If it is, I feel sorry for you a little bit.
I would say it's a bad decision, but I think if I had to pick, I'd go with Sony just because I think they're hoping at some point to get him going. And obviously, if you start him on that day, that could be good. But, I'm not sure, Richard's necessarily going to get any more.
And you know what? It's interesting because I was asked a question earlier today, Sony Michel or Amari Cooper. And my answer was, and as much as I don't love Amari Cooper because, last year, he was a big disappointment. I don't trust the Raiders offense week to week, but it's hard to trust Sony Michel right now when Burkhead and James White are also going to be guiding the ball. He brought up the point, Michel can catch passes. Well, so did James White and Rex Burkhead. Week to week with the New England running backs, unless there's a key injury to one or two of them, it's certainly a risky play. I think the ceiling could be higher for Michel, but I don't like his floor.
Now, they just popped in and said Yeldon is another option. I think I'd go Yeldon over either one of those.
Absolutely.
By far. Even with Corey Grant out there. Right, that's the other guy. So I definitely would probably take Yeldon over either of those. And I am one of those that right now on the Sony Michel thing, I really think once their team comes back, Edelman, and they don't necessarily have to worry as much about a passing down back on the field all the time, that helps him a little bit because, he can stay in that backfield and then you're not sure. He can still catch, but they don't have that catching running back in the game, but they still have Edelman and Hogan on the field, so it gives them a lot more options. I really think in another couple of weeks, he's one of my buy low. I think if that's a term, I still think there's a few people that aren't that are scared now that Sony hasn't done anything. But I really think here in the next few weeks, he could be, I think he could take off with that offense personally.
Yeah, he certainly couldn't. I mean, they wouldn't have drafted him where they did if they didn't have the mindset of, him developing into their guy. For me, though, at least at this point, I look at Brady and the rapport he has with certain players. He trusts James White, in my opinion, almost more than anybody outside of Rob Gronkowski at this point. So to me, in a big drive or in a tight game, he's going to try and get the ball into White's hands. And I saw play last week versus Jacksonville. They had Michelle in the game. They were going to be they tried to dump off to Michelle, and he just didn't finish his route.
Right.
And he ended up dropping the pass. And the next drive, James White was in there. Same play, White caught the ball, got a first down. So little things like that where Michelle is still learning, the NFL game, the NFL speed. That's just why at this point, and I could be wrong, maybe he goes off this week, maybe he goes off 1 week. But for me, he's one of those guys that I keep on my bench until he burns me by being on my bench.
Right. I'm just saying he's one of those guys where if I have someone that for some roster moves or I'm at no great waiver out there, but I'm going to maybe, look where I have someone that I'm willing to drop, I would offer maybe that guy in some cases in a trade to the Sony owner. Just, maybe you get him for somebody you're going to drop instead of using a waiver on him. Because if he has another week or two where he doesn't do much, he probably could get dropped in a few leagues. But I like the situation. I just think it's going to take a few more weeks. So that's that. Real AA is saying Marvin, all capital. So I'm assuming he's screaming, which if you listen to his podcast, I do believe he's screaming. Is Marvin Jones not effing playing today? Question mark.
Well, he's not playing today because he's not playing today.
Game, right?
Tonight. Yeah, he'd be playing tonight.
Oh, it's tonight. Okay.
Tonight, it's the Sunday nighter versus the New England Patriots.
That's right. That's them because tomorrow's Pittsburgh.
From what I've seen, he could be available. It might not be available, and because of the night game, you kind of get screwed here,
right?
Because you're not going to know till before. So if I'm a Marvin Jones owner and I have somebody else playable, I would just not take the risk.
Right, I agree. Luckily, what I tell everyone, it's still the third week. I'd rather, like you said, make a switch unless you have an option or maybe you have a Monday guy or a slot for a Monday guy where you could drop and pick up and grab somebody on a Monday night and make up some points that way maybe. But
and certain leagues, you also have the IR spots, like the leagues that we have in the First and Goal podcast. So if Marvin Jones is ruled out, you can put him on the IR. You have a pickup right there. Pick somebody up in the Bucks.
So the key is to look and see who's playing these next, the other 4 teams or the 3 teams if you don't have any other Lions available. So I agree. Use that. I do that, every Sunday morning. As soon as they put that O in there, you move them down to that IR and pick up somebody, even if it's a handcuff or something, in case somebody gets hurt, you already have him, and then when you have to move the guy off your IR, you still have maybe trade options or something like that. So,
absolutely. That guy has a question for us. So with Leonard Fournette out, he has Matt Breida as one flex, and he's playing Devontae Parker. The other options he could use are Yeldon, John Ross, Laquan Treadwell, or Jared Cook. Certainly like Breida. Not sure how I feel about Devontae Parker because he hasn't been playing. Tannehill seems to really like him.
I'm a Stills guy. I got confidence in Stills, but I mean Parker can have I think he's going to have a few weeks. Again, to me, he's one of those best ball guys. Parker's going to have a game or two where you're like, those 20 some points on your bench didn't help you. But I think again, when I see Yeldon, if Yeldon's starting, that's out of all those, that would be my option still.
Yeah, same with me. And AA says, so with Marvin Jones being questionable, do you like Goodwin or Kupp? So I do like Goodwin as a player. I do like the matchup in probably a shootout with the Chiefs, but I've read that he is probably going to not be playing as many snaps this week as expected. With that being said, Cooper Kupp in PPR formats, even if he doesn't get in the end zone, even with Brandon Cooks, even with Gurley, even with Robert Woods, Kupp is still one of the focal points in that offense. I think Kupp is the safer play over Goodwin. However, if Goodwin is healthier than being advertised, he could put up big numbers for you. So if you want to play it safe, I'd go Cooper Kupp. How about you?
I'm on Kupp all the way. Unfortunately, I don't know about you. I don't even know if you guys heard it. My ESPN beepers going off on my phone. This guy's on your bench, scheduled to get more points, blah, blah, blah. This guy's now active. But the important one is I am in the real series. This is the second week of my championship is starting, and I have Soto on my bench. So I'm going to have to make a baseball move here in the next 15 or 20 minutes because Soto's on my bench. I got to get him in my outfield. So important baseball information there for the Lenny Melnick fantasysports.com people. I hear an ESPN announcer go off on my phone. I'm thinking, some football thing's going down. No, it's my lineup screwed up in my baseball league. So I'm going to have to get that situated. So, right. Don't you love that noise? I hate it when it's on my television because I'm an anti-ESPN person anymore. But you know what? That noise on your phone when I'm walking around work and I have the Bluetooth on, I'm even actually really working, and it happens in my ear. I'm like, oh crap! Is that a trade offer? Is that a decline? Is it something major? What is it? And 90% of the time it's still stupid, but you do get excited when you hear it, and you're a fantasy guy.
Absolutely, you do. I mean, it gets me in the mood for sports. That's for sure. Real AA: Pettis, Anthony Miller, Adrian Peterson, or Josh Gordon. I like Josh Gordon, but I don't know how he's going to fit into the Pats offense at this point, so I would take a pass for this week. I think Chris Thompson is still the guy to start in Washington over Adrian Peterson.
Right.
Success in his career versus the Packers. That was obviously done with the Vikings. Pettis to me is kind of a big play, might make 2 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, but if he doesn't get that touchdown, you're upset. So I think Anthony Miller might actually be my guy.
I'm
tough call though.
I could live with that, but I think I'd go with Peterson. I know he doesn't have a great matchup, but again, we all had that earlier. To me, he's still kind of a starter, and you never know. And I would assume if they get down within the 5, they're going to hand him the ball, so you hopefully get a touchdown out of him. I guess it's back to you always hear, do you need upside? Do you need this? Is it a PPR? That kind of stuff. Obviously, Anthony Miller, could have, a 100-yard game on 3 passes, and one of those be a touchdown. So, that's possible too. But I don't think you can start Josh Gordon this week. I really don't.
No, I couldn't either. And my problem with Adrian Peterson, and I actually have a league where I own Peterson and Thompson. I'm certainly using Thompson, but to me, with Adrian Peterson, the issue is game script. I look at this game and I see Washington playing from behind versus a high-powered Packers offense. And if that's the case, you're going to see a hell of a lot more Thompson than you are of Adrian Peterson. The only way, I think you nailed it on the head, if Peterson is going to make some noise for you this week, it's going to be within in the red zone.
Right. He did say it's a PPR. So with it being a PPR, maybe you go with Miller a little more there. He's also starting Josh Doxson. So I would say maybe the upside now I would change. Maybe I would want the upside with Miller. And now someone's talking about, he's also saying Kerryon Johnson. He must have about 14 people on the bench because he keeps adding people to this question. But I do have that question also. I have Kerryon Johnson in a league. And hey, if I don't get my questions in this, why do I get up on Sunday mornings? But I do have Kerryon Johnson, and I have Tariq Cohen. Those are that's one of my kind of start sit things. And this morning I did put Cohen in the lineup, and that's where I'm that's where I'm headed right now. What's your opinion?
I would never advise starting a Lions running back.
I know.
Already compete.
But come on, it makes Monday. It makes, and back the fan of me though is like, I love having a little skin on the Sunday night game. Yep. So I have done that before, and it's bit me. But hey, you know what? I'm one of those. I've come from the poker side of things. If you listened to last week when I talked a little bit about my history, and you know what, I'm one of those. Once I've shoved my money in, it's not my money anymore. So once I put money in these leagues, you know what? Now it's my entertainment. And if that gives me a hair more entertainment, and it's a coin flip, I'll put the Sunday night guy in just so I have a reason to stay awake. Great advice, I'm sure. Great advice.
We have a question here. Another one. I missed it completely from Cubba. Jamal Williams, Green Bay running back, or Deshaun Jackson in the flex. I'm definitely going Deshaun Jackson. You saw
I agree.
The Steelers defense is soft. I don't know if Deshaun Jackson can keep up the pace he's at. I think he's ranked 3rd right now in wide receiver rankings.
Now in Green Bay backs,
playability. solid. And yeah, I think what you're going to say, the Green Bay backs, I think Aaron Jones might be back now too.
Yeah, he's back, but I still think Williams is the guy, especially with Rodgers being hurt. I still think they want his blocking ability in there, and they're not going to trust a rookie right now with Aaron not being 100%. So I still think he's the back to own and even the back to start if you don't have any options, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm one of those, I don't like chasing points, but 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I'm good with throwing, my money back on that one.
Yes, most definitely. And for me, I'll go with Deshaun Jackson over Jamal Williams.
And I am too. That would be the decision I would probably make.
They're at home in Tampa versus a porous team in the Steelers defensively. Probably going to be a lot of points in that game, similar to what we saw from the Bucs in Week 1 versus the Saints, what we saw with the Steelers in Week 2 versus the Chiefs.
Right, I agree. Did I see they were giving us Marvin Jones Motown repping Double A? Do you love Double A? It's hard not to enjoy Double A and the podcast he did the other day. I gotta say, I could not have laughed more. Enjoyed it. I'm not even sure what the hell it's called. It's like Thursday night, something
Thirsty Thursday or something like that.
Thursday, girls in the corner. I don't know. Cub Up was just throwing the softballs, and Double A was running it. I was loving it. And I do have a real important question that I have is: are we repping the Raptors on that hat there?
We certainly are.
Okay, I thought I saw the little purple beast on the side there, and then and what's the jersey? What do we got? Is that Zeke Elliott? All right, so we're running with the cow. Is it a Cowboys thing?
It is a Cowboys thing. The thing with the hat is actually baseball related. So I have 4 different Yankees hats that I wear. And when the Yankees win, I will go back to that same hat. But they've been losing so much lately, I switched it up. I started wearing my Leafs hat and my Raptors hat. And I was wearing the Leafs hat. I was wearing the Leafs hat in the Boston series. They won those first 2 games. They lost to the Red Sox, so I switched to the Raptors hat. They won yesterday, and Friday, so I'm rolling with the Raptors until they lose.
I got you. I mean, I'm a Zeke guy. I am far from a Cowboys person, but I mean, obviously, I'm a Buckeye, so I do support the Buckeyes out and about in the league. I do struggle having to root for him when he's playing, because he's on the Cowboys, but I do rep him a little bit. Any other big news? I've just kind of been watching the news things flip by. I haven't seen anybody else lately the start sit or anybody who is inactive. My concern is, do you have any names or anything you're expecting to be inactive for the 4 o'clocks, which obviously don't have to be announced for a little while yet?
Nothing at this point that's obvious. I do want to confirm, though, that Devonta Freeman is out. I think a lot of people knew that, but he was still listed as questionable for a while. He is out, so Tevin Coleman is the guy today versus the Saints. And back to the Cowboys for just a moment here. So I
don't want to.
People give me crap sometimes, like, "Oh, you like the Cowboys?" Blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but I was born in 1989, right? The end of 1989. So when the Cowboys last won, I was 5 years old. So I'm not a bandwagon fan.
You're a baby homer. You've been a homer since the baby.
The Cowboys have sucked since I've really been watching and understanding football. So you can't call me a bandwagoner for that, but let's move on.
Well, again, I support the Bengals now. I grew up as a young child. I was the 60s. So there was no Bengals early in the 60s. But same with you. I grew up a Dolphins fan because obviously in the early 70s, there wasn't too many teams better than the Dolphins.
That's the Shula era.
Oh, definitely the Shula era, the undefeated era. And I had relatives that lived in Florida. So as kids, a cheap vacation would be we'd go to Florida and visit family. And my Uncle Pete took me. My first football game ever was the Dolphins and the Bears. And obviously I became a Dolphins fan, real quickly. It wasn't hard to be a Dolphins fan when you're roughly 10 or 12 years old and they're undefeated and, a great team. But obviously if you were a 70s Dolphins person, you could not be a Cowboys person because obviously Cowboys were really good in the 70s. And a lot of times, the Dolphins that was one of the games or one of the teams that they would go back and forth. And then it goes all the way back. I gave up on the Dolphins when they hired Jimmy Jones. I refused to be a fan of a team that would hire the coach of their rival team, which to me the Cowboys were. So I gave up on them, moved to the Bengals, and they have sucked pretty much also during that period. So,
well, let me ask you this: what are your thoughts on the Bengals 2-0 start? It's sustainable? Do they have a shot at this division, or was it a matter of relatively easy matchup versus the Colts and then the short week?
I was really excited about their offense because they improved their line just enough, which I think that's all they needed, is just enough. I'm not an Andy Dalton person, but at the same time, he has enough weapons. The team is strong enough in those places. Obviously, Mixon comes back will help.
Thoughts on Gio Bernard this week? I mean, he's going to be getting the volume. Not a great matchup versus Carolina, though.
I know, but I think volume again. I have a league where I didn't have a choice, so I put him in. I
have him in a DFS lineup this week. Just from a pure volume standpoint.
What are your feelings on the '84 Super Bowl missed field goal by Ray Finkel? The
only thing I know about that is from Ace Ventura.
Well, that's because that's all it is. That's the because again, when I was a Dolphins fan, and now I got to stop. I used to always know his name. Because that's one of the big bloopers of the '70s is the Dolphins kicker trying to pass that ball when he missed. When the field goal was dropped. That little short foreigner guy. I cannot think of the name, but he was their kicker for a long time. Obviously, Ray Finkel is a fictional character, but I agree. Ray Finkel should have made the kick in the movie Super Bowl anyway when he did that. I'm against it.
Definitely should have been.
But the Bengals. And I know a couple questions I'd have been teams. I'm still, people who do have Ross on their team. I still think Boyd is the person to play right now. I think Boyd, if in some leagues, I'm amazed Boyd's out there in a lot of leagues still. If you have Ross and Boyd is out there to be picked up, I'd start Boyd in some cases over a few of these people I've seen today because I think he is going to throw the ball. I know it's not a great matchup, but I think Boyd being in the slot actually could be the person today that the Bengals get the ball to.
And I like their slot receivers a lot more while Tyler Eifert's still healthy because, that middle of the field block, they're going to be focused on him. So I do like that. I just want to say to JJ Work, I know he's new to the chat room, was there yesterday for my first and goal show, said that he's on the West Coast now. Well, so am I. So kudos to you, my friend JJ Work. West Coast rocks. But back to football here. So, there are some guys questionable, like Larry Fitzgerald. He should play. One of the ones that is still interesting, I'm not sure. Oh, no, it's official. LaShawn McCoy is 100% inactive today.
Okay, so he is inactive, and that is a 4:00 game. So now my thing is I still don't think I want to play anybody on the Bills, but if you have no choice, if you have Ivory, I'm trying to think who their other backup is.
I believe it's Marcus Murphy.
That is correct. Right.
Out. I mean, I already said yesterday, avoid McCoy even if he is playing.
Right.
Firstly, the Vikings hell of a rush defense, but it's in Minnesota. You got to figure the Bills are going to fall behind by 17, 20 points early by the end of the first half. I don't see the Buffalo running backs getting any action.
Now, a lot of the names thrown out today of the questions and asked all that. I still would put Yeldon over, anybody from Buffalo also. I mean, if that's your choice, if you have Yeldon, I'd still would start him over anyone else from Buffalo at this point. Again, that offense is, right now them in Arizona, other than David Johnson, I'm not sure out of those two teams, are you starting anybody else other than David Johnson? And now I said, Fitzpatrick, I think now is officially active, but at his age, would you put him in if you don't have any? If you have a choice, let's say, do you play Larry, thinking he's still going to get some catches, maybe in the PPR, or because of his age and being somewhat injured, do you run the risk of him only playing maybe a quarter and not be able to make it?
I think he'll fight through the game, but I just don't trust him at this point, especially from
him or Bradford.
Yeah, so I'm not loving that. So there's been some conflicting reports in Tennessee, and I mean, I wouldn't be starting either one of them in Jacksonville, but Marcus Mariota is active. However, he's going to be serving as the backup to Blaine Gabbert. Not sure if I understand why, but either way, if you have either one of those guys, you're definitely not starting them today. But just in case for those who might have seen Mariota active, thinking that he's going to play, he is not. He is listed as the backup behind Mr. Gabbert.
Right. I would agree. I wouldn't want to play either one of those. Now, again, maybe in 2 quarterback leagues or super flex where you don't have any options, depending on your bench and whatever. I know in some of those leagues you get where every single quarterback is taken. But that might be one of those few rare occasions in a super flex. I might try to find someone else versus a quarterback.
Yes.
I know experts in air quotes don't like you to ever say that their point is a quarterback with a ball in their hand is always a better option in a super flex than somebody else. But hey, I have gone against it a few times and it's paid off a few times. And obviously,
to me, it depends who the quarterback is.
Right. Well, I'm talking the 2 you just named. Let's say I'm trying to think some of the names back to even Yeldon. I would play Yeldon over either of those quarterbacks in a super flex if that was an option I had.
Yeah, I would too in the matchup versus Jacksonville. Tom Brady had issues for
exactly. Yeah, that's my point. You run the risk there of a quarterback, one of those where at the half you have -3, and then you're hoping he gets you 12, because he had to throw up some, fourth quarter balls. So,
and what I love is all those people that took the Jacksonville defense early and in drafts and, may have gotten crapped on a little bit for it. They might be one of the highest scoring players or plays all week this week.
Right.
Wise, quarterbacks, tight ends, whatever it is. Jacksonville defense is a good shot for 20+ points.
Right. And like I said, I don't do much DFS, but I always throw one DFS in there and here's where, again, I'm a fan. I throw in a Bengals full lineup. I get as many Bengals in there as I can. And I know everyone will say blah, blah, blah. And I play a bunch of just small single entry tournament type things where it's, a few bucks here and there just so, again, gives me something to cheer. But I always, I will, that is the defense I worked in my Bengals lineup. I don't obviously put the Bengals defense in there because I always assume if my Bengals lineup's going to go off, I need the other team to score some points also. So I never pick the Bengals as the defense, but I don't know. Like I said, to me, I don't have time. One of these days we need to do a DFS show where we, go and probably needs to be about an hour or so long where we get into some details because I just haven't got into it. The amount of time I spend a lot of time in the weekly stuff, and it just seems like, and again, coming from the poker world where people don't think there's any studying to be done, I spend a lot of time studying poker, a lot. And in fantasy, it's the same way, and people don't understand that sometimes. But in weekly, you can get away with a little study. But in daily, you are just giving your money away if you're not into daily, to me, committed. You got to commit to it. And I don't have the time and haven't had the desire yet to commit to it. And to be honest, I feel, that's why I don't want to do it. I feel one of those, I know how I am. I would probably drop weekly and commit to daily. I just don't see the real good players doing both. And from some of the stuff I learn and read about that's really the case. The real good daily players, they're out of the weekly stuff just because they don't have the time.
I feel you, and maybe I'm not a really good player, maybe I'm just a decent player, but I do both. Weekly to me is so much more straightforward that even if I'm just doing a lot of research on the daily stuff, it allows me to also do my weekly research because I know who I want to play in my lineups weekly if I'm doing a lot of research on the daily side of it. One thing I don't do is typically I don't pay up for defenses on the daily side. So I will not have any Jacksonville today. I will not have any Minnesota today, even though both of them are great. The most expensive defense I have today is one share of the Bears versus the Cardinals. But for the most part, I have cheap options like the Texans versus the Giants and the Cowboys versus the Seahawks.
Now, Andrea real quick is asking in the chat room, wait, so if you study enough on daily, then your weekly should be no issue. I technically disagree with that a little bit because, again, they're two different things. Excuse me. You can't just drop and pick up people. There's good daily players that you just can't get in your lineup or because of money or the value and all that. that for weekly don't help. That's the point. In weekly, you're committed to a certain group of players, that you have on your bench. So when I've learned enough when I watch these or listen to podcasts and all that, you know what? You got to be careful when people start talking about daily and who's a great play. It doesn't mean they're a good weekly player and vice versa.
Yep. That is true. You have to be able to decipher between the two, but I do think she is right in a sense, because I know for myself, when I am doing all my research for daily, it's essentially still the same research for me to do in weekly. And again, I think weekly is a lot more straightforward because you already have your roster. So you're really only deciding on matchups and players. And if you're doing enough research on the daily side, you know everything you want to know about each of those players.
Right. I agree. All right. We went a tad over. I think we decided we were going to try to do about 30 or 40 minutes. And unfortunately, and Chris, he didn't make it, but he'll tell you, me and him struggle with staying under an hour and a half. Once I start talking fantasy, Easy can't keep his mouth shut. But I had a great time. I think we answered a lot of the questions in the chat room. But like I said, I could start at the beginning. You know what, everybody, you set your lineups. We're here to help give you some information so that you have the ability to, actually maybe make an educated choice. But, set your lineups, enjoy. I had fun. Lou, where can people get a hold of you? What information you want to put out there before we go and watch football?
I just want to say thanks to you. Thanks to everybody in the chat room, anyone listening on YouTube. You can follow me at Landers Talks or Lander Stocks on Twitter.
I like it.
Yeah, and you can, of course, find me on LennyMelnickFantasySports.com on air at least 3 times a week, sometimes more. I'm always in the chat room whenever I can get there. You can also, find me on Facebook, Lou Landers. So many ways to find me, and I love to talk sports, and I love to answer questions, and I will not charge you for my opinions like so many other experts like to do.
There you go. And me and Chris talked about it a lot of times. That was one of my long time, a few podcasts back where we did some do's and don'ts before the season started, was, you know what, when you first get into this, be cautious of the paywalls. You'll find that, you know what, at some point, and I'll be honest, there's some that I now pay for because I know how to use the information. But early on as a beginner in fantasy, you're wasting your money until you kind of know how to use that information. There's enough free stuff out there. And obviously one of those is the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports.com, where we are pretty involved in the chat room. And it is a chat room been there now for almost 2 years. You know what? Get involved. It's pretty nice. It's fun. We harass each other. We have, a great time every morning. And obviously now it's turning into weekends. So that's really good. I do have a test show we're going to be doing Tuesday night. I am going to pub that a little bit. Ease Around the Table is going to be a fantasy round table with fans and hosts to some of the shows on LennyMelnickFantasySports.com, where we get, hopefully, we're going to have 3, 4, 5 people maybe coming and going in a chat room where we can talk some sports issues and whatever. It's going to be 10 p.m. on Tuesday night. It is going to be no language barriers, so it's going to be late at night. We're going to discuss as adults. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Hope you join us there, Lou. I had a few people in the chat room talking about how they can't wait to listen. They're interested. I'm amazed how many people. I have got multiple people requesting to be on the show, but I'm telling everybody, you know what? I want all of you to try to be on the show. If not this week, let me know, in the future. You know what? Even if you're just a guest or just a fan like me, we want people on that show to talk sports and maybe enjoy and have fun with that. But I appreciate y'all coming out tonight. I got some brisket to start working on. My barbecue sauce, I can smell that from here. I'm having a good time. Lou, thanks for coming out. Lenny Melnick, FantasySports.com. I'm Easy Kill at a Fantasy Fan. Shoot us an email or text, Twitter, whatever it is, if you have questions for next week. We'll see you. Enjoy your football today, guys.
Take care.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say good night. Good night.